Number 10. A sunken village. In 1978, villagers in the western Romanian village of Geamana were forced by the then communist regime to flee their homes. What remains of the settlement today can only be described as something out of a nightmare. Today, the settlement is slowly drowning, hidden beneath a deluge of toxic waste. 4 decades after its residents were pushed out, nothing more than the tips of the rooftops can be seen now and again. In fact, the only constant reminder that the town of Geamana ever existed is the church spire sticking out from the toxic lake. In the shallower waters away from the village center, abandoned pieces of farm equipment and ruined houses can sometimes be seen as well. So how did this happen? Villagers were forced from their homes because of an incoming toxic flood from the nearby copper mine. Nobody wanted to flee, but they didn't have any choice. The toxic sludge came pouring into the village and destroyed everything in sight. Today, the village is still hidden beneath the yellow, bubbling, toxic gunk. And to make things truly tragic, it was all on purpose. In 1977, the communist dictator Nicolae Ceausescu made plans to build the biggest mine in Romania, and he was ultimately successful. At one point, it was the highest producing copper mine in the region. However, waste products from the mine washed into the man-made valley where Geamana was located, turning the community into a catch basin for the toxic, acidic, gray and red waste that flooded the area. Ceausescu didn't mind if toxic waste flooded the town. He gave the villagers, many of whom had families that had been living there for generations, less than $2,000 each to forsake their homes and abandon their lives. Some 20 families initially refused to leave, simply moving to higher ground. Geamana now serves as a potent reminder of the tragic effects humans can have on the environment. Number 9. Illusions in the Hudson Valley Mine. The Widow Jane Mine in the Hudson Valley, New York was at one time the main source of concrete for the entire United States. This was way back in the early 1800s. The mine supplied the concrete that was used to build much of the country's infrastructure at the time. The mine can be found today in Ulster County, just a short drive from the town of Poughkeepsie. While many abandoned mines and other locations similar to this are off-limits, this is one of the few that can be accessed without breaking any laws. It's creepy, it's been abandoned for decades, it's partially flooded, and it is rumored that sometimes those who visit its eerie underground passages come face to face with the dead. Locals say a woman named Jane Lefevre Snyder lived at a nearby estate. She was a beloved figure in the community and became a widow at the age of 31. She also lost all 4 of her male children when they were just infants. The Snyder family owned and operated the mine from 1825 to 1970, and apparently the Widow Jane's spirit is said to still lurk in the darkest depths of the mine. Those who have ventured down into its dark chasm say they witnessed her ghostly specter, a woman in a long white dress, wandering through the blackness, though nobody can say why she refuses to leave the abandoned mine. Number 8. Creepy Cottage. Colin Smith is a plumber who likes to go urban exploring in his spare time. The UK native was recently traveling the countryside looking for interesting places to explore when he discovered a horrifying abandoned cottage in Devon. Naturally, he broke into the cottage and took a look around. The cottage proved to be a gold mine of abandoned relics from a bygone era. He discovered bizarre photographs of indigenous communities from across the globe, family photos that looked like they came from the Victorian days, broken furniture, and heaps of dusty books. There was a TV there from the 1990s, a cast-iron stove, and the whole place was filled with vegetation growing through the walls. It's been abandoned for at least 20 years, but Colin has no idea why. The door was wide open when he showed up, leading Colin to suspect that someone had explored the abandoned cottage before him. The sheer volume of personal effects, items, and belongings left the whole scene feeling sad and eerie. Colin went on to say all of their possessions were left in the house, which makes me think that maybe whoever lived there lived alone and had nobody to sort out their stuff after they died or ended up in the hospital. Number 7. Lost Theme Park. The Enchanted Forest Amusement Park in Maryland opened its doors in August of 1955. This was about a month after Disneyland opened. The park was dreamt up by a man named Howard Harrison, who based all the rides and attractions on family nursery rhymes and popular fairy tales. The park included boat rides, antique cars, a petting zoo, and plenty of cute animated characters. For about 30 years, the park was a big success. The park was ahead of the times, welcoming all to enjoy their rides and make believe even during the time of segregation, making it a standout from other attractions across the country. But alas, after some time, people stopped taking their kids to the Enchanted Forest and the whole place fell into disrepair. In the 80s, malls, video game arcades, and the success of bigger and more impressive parks like King's Dominion and Hershey Park drew away business. Ultimately, it was abandoned. In 1987, the Harrison family didn't have enough money to maintain the park and were forced to sell the land to a shopping center developer for millions. But the company never developed the shopping center. They just left the enchanted forest alone to be reclaimed by nature. Decades later, a woman named Martha Clark discovered the abandoned theme park and decided to claim it for herself. In 2004, she purchased all the pieces of the theme park and started moving them to her farm. It took her nearly a decade to move all the attractions, but she managed to take every single one of them and bring them onto her own property. She even moved the giant dragon and its castle. The original site of the amusement park is still abandoned today, but now all of its props are sitting on some random woman's farm just a few miles down the road. Number 6. Discarded boats. The coastline around Devon and Cornwall in the United Kingdom is plagued by abandoned boats. Fishermen and boating enthusiasts have dumped hundreds of plastic boats and derelict vessels off the coast, and they always end up washing back to shore in the same place. This has created one of the most shocking boat graveyards in the world. The wreckage of the Dignity is caught in the muck of a tidal creek in Devon, shedding toxic paint into the water where swans feed. Other vessels have batteries and oils leaking into the water. While it may look fascinating from the outside seeing hundreds of boats that people have literally just dumped here, it's actually quite terrible for the environment. Some of these boats contain asbestos, which gets into the water and kills the local wildlife. According to the local officials, the problem is just getting worse. A brief trip through the area makes you think of a post-apocalyptic landscape with boat holes sticking through the sand, boats tipped over and cracked on the shore, and random anchors rusted and covered with crustaceans. Number 5. Polar bear invasion. When a Russian photographer visited a series of abandoned buildings at a derelict meteorological station on a small island, he discovered the impossible. The island is located in the Chukchi Sea, extremely hard to get to in the middle of Russia and Alaska. The photographer had to take a sailing yacht along the coast over 1,200 miles along a totally empty landscape. The villages here are all abandoned. There isn't a single person living for hundreds of miles around, and the only residents are the local wildlife. When the photographer reached the meteorological station on Wrangel Island, he was shocked to find that the abandoned buildings had been taken over by polar bears. A polar bear literally walked out of the front door of one of these buildings, while another leaned out of the window and stared at him. Some of the houses had as many as 4 polar bears living inside them. They acted as perfect shelters for these hungry predators, making great use out of the decaying 1930s structures. It's amazing because it goes to show that once humans leave an area, wild animals come back almost immediately. And if there are houses left behind, they have no problem taking them over. If your neighborhood was abandoned today, what kind of animals do you think would take over? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to hit subscribe before the end of the video. Number 4. 8 feet under. Investigators in Alabama came across something horrifying beneath the floorboards of an abandoned home in Georgetown. Underneath a room in the house, 8 feet below the foundation, the unidentified remains of a man were uncovered. According to Sergeant Mark Bailey, he'd never seen anything like it in his 23 years of law enforcement. The body was disposed of and then the floor put back together to hide it. The body was buried deeper than it would have been in a grave at a cemetery. Nobody knows whose bones these are. The remains have been beneath the abandoned structure for at least 14 months, which has so far made identification impossible. There are no persons of interest, no arrests have been made, and nobody has any clue as to what happened. Somebody knew the abandoned house was the perfect place to bury a body, and they buried it in the cleverest way possible. The only reason the cops found it was because they had been called to the home for suspicious activity and brought their canine unit with them. The canines managed to sniff out the corpse. Number 3. Abandoned Wisconsin. The Paradise Springs Nature Trail leads directly to a series of creepy abandoned buildings in Wisconsin. It's part of a larger natural area filled with hiking trails and beautiful springs. People normally visit the trail to enjoy the peace and quiet of nature, but urban explorers have discovered that if you go to the end of the trail, you reach a creepy old bottling plant. This natural spring was previously the location of a number of different things. At one point, it was a resort hotel. Close enough to Milwaukee but far enough to count as a getaway spot, the area also previously played host to a horse track that was built in the 1920s. The area also used to be extremely popular with trout fishermen until the dam broke, washing the fish downstream and leaving only the spring behind. Up until the 1960s, spring water was bottled at this facility. That's why it's so deep in the woods where the spring water is the freshest. But it was abandoned and disassembled, and now there are only a handful of ruins. Some of the stone walls just refuse to fall over. The few buildings still standing will probably remain here for the next 100 years. Number 2. Abandoned Farmhouse. An urban explorer named Daniel Sims stumbled upon a deserted farmhouse in the UK. The farmhouse appeared to have been abandoned abruptly, just after its residents put breakfast on the table. The farmhouse proved to be one big gold mine of creepy. Daniel entered the house and was immediately shocked by the memorabilia dating as far back as the 30s littering every surface. There were creepy dolls, kids' toys all over the floor, and personal effects everywhere. The calendar on the wall was from 1996, suggesting the place had only been abandoned for about 20 years. Yet in all this time, nobody has ever returned to clear the stuff out or demolish the structure, which is located in the middle of the rural countryside. It's so far off the road you'd never find it unless you were really hunting for it. But the real mystery has been trying to figure out where the people went and why they left. Daniel discovered milk and jam still on the kitchen table, with plates laid out as if they'd been preparing breakfast. Something must have spooked them because they never got around to finishing their toast. Number 1. The SS Leopoldville. On December 24, 1944, the SS Leopoldville was deployed to fight in the Battle of the Bulge. It was carrying 2,000 American soldiers. When the ship neared its destination, just 5 miles from France, it was hit by a torpedo from a German submarine. The torpedo decimated the ship, causing mass panic and chaos through the decks. 300 soldiers were killed immediately by the blast, with another 463 dying in the frigid waters of the English Channel as they desperately tried to reach the shore. It was one of the biggest tragedies in the history of the U.S., and it was made all the more terrible because it even happened on Christmas Eve. The ship sank to the bottom of the channel, and there it has remained abandoned ever since. In a recent special by National Geographic, they took a look at the ship on the ocean floor, except they took away the water. The special was called Drain the Oceans. They were looking at famous wrecks across the world and what they might look like if all the water suddenly evaporated. What other kinds of crazy things do you think we'd find if we drained the oceans? Let me know in the comments, and thanks so much for watching. Remember to hit subscribe, and we'll see you next time for another amazing video right here on American Eye.